everybody. It's Thursday, July 27th. I'm Jane Johnston with the Bar Hill Group. Welcome to the Victoria Real Estate Show. I'm here with...
Good morning, everyone. It's Andrew Plank with the Vibe Real Estate Group in Royal LePage.
How's the Vibe Real Estate Group going?
Good. Yeah, we're still working on some elements of, fun things like logo and so forth. And we're going to be doing an event coming up that we're going to invite a lot of people to. We're still keeping it a low profile in the sense that like soft launches and so forth as we build up our systems. But it's been really a good positive experience being able to form a team and work in conjunction with someone else. It adds a little energy to the whole thing as opposed to being a solo agent, for sure.
We usually do a little chat every morning, about 10 minutes, our power hour chat, and just update with what's going on. I picture a big V with looking like it's vibrating.
For the Vibe Real Estate Group, that's for our logo. Okay, well, you're in charge then. We'll hire you. Send us some proposals.
Okay, and how's your week been so far?
So far, so good. I was telling you I have some back issues lately. That's been kind of causing me some distress, and when you're in pain, you don't want to work. But it's summertime. Things are a little slower, but at the same time, I have some. There's always urgency in this business. There's always the chance of urgency, and I've got some buyers. We're just waiting for the right property to come up, and we've got to pounce. Limited, we've got some limited time options because they have to be out of their home, that kind of thing.
So I wrote an offer subject to sale for one of my clients. She's 90, and we wrote it on a condo. We listed her house. We had it ready to go from the spring.
Yep.
We literally pressed start, and we got 5 offers on her property. So hopefully today's a rescission period on her offer. We got 7 offers on her property. Yeah. Anyway, and then she was just like, she's so happy just because it's been very stressful to try and find a place that she can move into.
I was lucky in the sense that I helped a client recently who just wanted to move within the same building and was waiting for the right opportunity to come up, and got word of a unit coming up for sale but hadn't been listed yet. So we were able to contact that agent, negotiate a subject to sale offer because there was time, and they were not going to be live on market with competition. So thankfully everything worked out, and she got her keys the other day, and has a beautiful move from a lower floor on one side of the building to the top floor on the other side of the building with beautiful views down the gorge. So now she was telling me that she was having a hard time getting work done because
she's enjoying the view.
She's enjoying the patio. Yeah.
Is this on Gorge? What is it? 103 Gorge or something like that?
No.
The one that's on the point there?
No, it's an older building down Washington Avenue.
Oh, I know.
And a lot of people don't know about it, and it's a little hidden gem, and those views are amazing.
Yes, I know.
And very affordable units.
Okay, yeah. And I know, yeah. Good for you. Okay, so let's start with our stats this week. And so we're with the Victoria Real Estate Show. We're doing an update for July 27th. Today's topic is focus on buyers, writing a great contract and accepted offer. Yay!
Yeah, there's so many subtleties to that we won't have time to cover it all today, but we'll go into some of the bits and pieces of what makes a good offer.
Okay, go ahead, take it away, Andrew.
Yeah, so let's talk about what happened so far this month up to Monday, July 24th, 2023. So far, we've had 433 unconditional sales. Compare that to the full month of July from 2022, where there were 510, and we are, we're going to be lower for sure, but getting close. New listings were at 843 so far for the full month, for the month of July from the 24th, and 1,101 for the full month of July in 2022. So going to be a little less for new listings. And then active listings currently at 2,417 versus 2,162 last year. So we're definitely building the inventory, but we haven't been finding, like, it's been consistently about 300 to 300 more units than last year as we've been doing these stats. So it's not really going up really quickly. It's just been hovering at a higher number. What would you say?
So in talking with agents all over North America, this is very consistent. Low inventory, historically low inventory. Um, List to sale ratio is still pretty good. Let's look at here.
Mm-hmm.
So 277 new listings and 191 pending is
And this is in
70% list to sale ratio.
70%. Okay.
Yeah. Price decreases are at 101 though. That's pretty much a record, I think, in my book.
A lot of price decreases, and it does show motivation in the marketplace. There's certain markets where we see a lot of new listings, and maybe not even a lot of pendings, but people are just holding to their price, and then they just expire unsold. And that's usually the case where they just really can't afford to sell. They don't want to sell for a price less than they're asking. The markets come down to a certain point.
Yeah. Price increases are at 6, back on market at 3, sold 197. So that's interesting to me considering we're at the end of July. The market here really goes, I would say, from February to the end of October on the outside.
We stopped seeing so much of that. When I first was in the market in real estate, and the graphs that we would be shown in the training was you have a spring market, then a lull in the summer, and then a fall market, which is secondary to the spring market, and then a lull in the winter. And so you've got these two lulls, summer and winter, with the main push in the spring. But we've seen a number of years recently where the push just goes right through the summer into the fall, and you don't really get the same kind of shape of the graph. And this year could be like that.
Yeah. Okay, so this is compared to 2 years ago. Andrew forwarded this to me. So let's just go back. So new listings 2 years ago was 200. We have 277 over the past week.
Yeah, it was more like, what was really interesting to me is the ratios. When we look, this is the right hand column here, the market watch. We had, and this was from exactly 2 years ago, July 26th, 2 years in a day. That new listings to pendings ratio was almost 1-to-1. We had almost every property listing was selling. And then when you look at the price decreases, it was quite a lot less. And then when you look at the actual expired and withdrawn, almost nothing.
So price decreases were 42 compared to 101 now. Back on market 3-2, which is similar. Sold 169, and for ours is 197.
Yeah. And then, looking back, this was in 2021. This other column here on the left, it's interesting as well, because when we look at the active listings in July 2021, it was really, really scarce inventory, 1,384. We have more realtors than we had listings at that time in our real estate board. And but then if you go a year back from there, we had 2,653 active listings in July 2020. So that's actually more listings than we currently have today.
Okay. Can you hear the vacuum in the background?
No, not at all.
Okay, good. I can. Okay. So let's just talk about the focus on buyers. I've been working with a lot of buyers recently. And so one difference between the market 2 years ago and now is first of all, we have terms and conditions, which we didn't have before, or we just had terms.
We did. Buyers were foregoing them often in order to win a purchase.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we have also added the rescission period, which adds a little layer of doubt to sellers, I find.
Yeah.
And so we just thought we'd go over what is an accepted offer, what are the next steps, and particularly recently for 3 of my clients, we've had septic inspections. So
yeah, let's take a step back here and just talk really quick about contract law. Like, what's a contract in itself? Well, there it is. It's going to have elements, and it's going to have things like you have to be capable of forming a contract. In other words, you have to have your wits about you or be of legal age. You need to be, there needs to be, used to have to be some sort of, what's the word? Material. What's the word? Oh boy. It'll come to me. Move on.
Okay. Well, it's legally binding, and generally all the conditions are for the sole benefit of the buyer. There can be conditions for the sole benefit of the seller, which I've written in this past week for one of my clients, in a subject to sale offer, just to ensure that she doesn't sell without buying. And generally there's a period where you will be able to investigate the property and conduct your business so that you make sure you're happy with the property that you're purchasing. And then the buyer usually removes the conditions. So it is binding. Sometimes once I've had a seller who told me she did not want to sell after we got an accepted offer.
And that's where you advise them to consult a lawyer, and then they will be looking at, the lawyer will look at that contract and ensure that all the proper elements do exist in that contract. And if they find any flaws in the contract, the seller may have an out. But if it's a well-written, proper contract, as currently written, as is our current format by the Victoria Real Estate Board and the BC Real Estate Association general forms, there's language in there that doesn't really allow the seller to step out, and that there's a reason for that, and that is to protect everyone and give certainty. Essentially, the seller could include a clause that allows them to come out, but the standard contract doesn't. And the buyer also doesn't have a step out unless there's conditions in the contract. So it just comes down to what conditions are put into the contract. And if the seller wants to have some conditions for an out, they can. There's often the ones we'd often see would be subject to lawyer approval or subject to accounting, professional advice of some sort.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's one realtor who always writes that in, and it always makes the buyers nervous. So the question is, do you want to negotiate that as a buyer where the seller can walk away?
Yeah. The word I was looking for before was consideration. There needs to be some consideration for a contract to be formed, some sort of item of value. And it doesn't have to be a physical item, but there needs to be some sort of item that you are negotiating here. So there needs to be an offer and an acceptance, certainty of terms, consideration, and intention to create a legal relations and a capacity of the parties. And then legality of purpose. You can't make a contract, legally enforceable contract, around, I don't know, selling drugs or something like that.
Okay. So the first part of the contract that you need to be aware of is that there is a rescission period for buyers. This is if they have second thoughts. It's specifically, I find, if it's an unconditional offer, although it could be used if you have a conditional offer. The rescission only applies to real property. So if you have a leasehold, you do not have a rescission period. It's for 3 business days. So if you write an offer on a Friday night and it gets accepted, the rescission period is actually the following Wednesday. Only the buyers can rescind, which we've been talking about, and you do have to notify the sellers in writing. So, and I find this part of the contract a bit awkward because it says notify the sellers, but
it's mostly notifying the realtor, and the person written into that section of the contract as the person for notice is the representative, generally is the realtor, because we are protecting our client's personal information. We don't really, I guess that's a discussion really to have with the seller, but we don't want generally to be connecting the buyer and seller directly during the negotiation period without their permission, and when those fields do allow for personal private information to be shared. So generally as representative, as we put ourselves in. The other thing I find about that field is that it asks for a fax number.
Yes.
And yeah, it was funny because in our Royal LePage group, one of our private online groups, someone posted, "Hey, does anybody have a fax number in Victoria I can borrow?" And one of the comments was, "A what?"
I
Yeah.
remember when it was a big deal in 1980s.
Well, we used fax a lot even when we were licensed in '06. There was a lot of faxing coming back and forth, and, those contracts would just get so messy.
Right, and they would get smaller and smaller and smaller,
But
and then you'd have to do a clarity contract. But anyway, the thing that's awkward about this rescission period expiration is that you don't get a notification if they're continuing. You only get a notification if they're discontinuing. So you kind of have to ask the agent, what's going on with your
yeah,
buyer? Are you going to rescind?
and then there's, uh, and I honestly don't know, how I don't remember how this works because it's not something that I anticipate ever having to use. But you can also do it by writing, and it can be done by registered mail, right?
Yeah,
And so then that 3-day period could go beyond 3 days. Can it not? Because it would have been sent and postmarked on the
the
3rd
date.
day. So this is crazy because we don't have the surety, we don't have the confidence of knowing exactly where things stand for quite some time. But we act on the assumption that people are probably not using that method.
So so we on my team, we just call the agent and say, what's the status here?
Anyway, like, this isn't the intention of our. I mean, we weren't going into the rescission period, but suffice to say, there's a lot of nuances. What if the property is, what if you're making a subject to sale offer? What if the property is tenanted and you're giving notice to the tenants and it's coming up at the end of the month, and you don't know yet if it's going to be rescinded. So anyway, this is one of the things around contracts. The thing that really binds a contract is the surety, the confidence that something's going to happen and you can act on it.
Yeah, it's the will to go forward. And this is all these things that you just mentioned are happening with a client of mine. So when you write the contract, is what Andrew's saying, is also very important because if you write the contract, you don't give yourself time for the rescission period and to give notice for a tenant, then you may have to delay the closing for another month.
Yeah, or not, or accept a property with tenants in place because they weren't given notice in a proper time and manner. Okay, let's move on.
So the rescission fee is $2,500 for $1 million property, and accordingly, 0.25% for
Up
other.
or down? Yeah.
Okay.
How do we determine price? That's always an interesting one. I generally give, when we're working with buyers, they have a pretty good sense of value, but then when it comes to a particular property, they may ask for, well, they'll ask you, what do you think? And they'll also ask, and we will provide recent sales in the neighborhood or comparable properties, and look at the various bits of information to try to determine, what value is.
And this relates to strategy because how you come in as a buyer will affect usually what the outcome is. Sometimes you
Mm.
can actually upset the seller if you're offering too low of an amount. They may not want to deal with you. In multiple offers specifically, this can be an issue because you really have to put your best foot forward right from the beginning. And so, if you have 5 to 7 offers,
Can't hear the raven.
pardon?
I said I can't hear the raven. I can't hear a vacuum, but I
I
can hear
know
you.
it's
That's
right there.
beautiful. Yeah.
And then the the deposit. So if you're going in with a strong offer, a deposit goes towards the down payment. It's put into trust. It's not an additional part of the offer. It is encapsulated into the purchase price.
Yeah.
So if you
Uh,
have the ability to put down a lot, this is
yeah.
what we're talking about surety. This is increases the surety.
Right. The more deposit you put down, the more it catches the seller's attention to say, oh, these people have the capacity to close. Deposit's not a requirement. You can have no deposit at all and still have a legally enforceable contract, for real estate, and that gets into some of the nuances. But you do need consideration, something of value, exchanged. But because of the way the language is written, that item of consideration is your seal.
Right. And the sooner you have it after your acceptance. So clause in the contract defaults to 24 hours. Sometimes we put after 2 days after business.
There's
2
no, sorry, I want to correct you there. There's no default of 24 hours. It's just upon acceptance, or upon acceptance is normally how it's written. Like if you just put a deposit in, it's going to be due upon acceptance.
Hold on a second.
Unless they've changed it recently. It's funny because some of these things do change, and we dinosaurs sometimes.
I'm just looking because now I want to 24 hours of acceptance.
Oh, is it that's the way it's written, is within 24 hours of acceptance now? Okay.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. I apologize.
Okay, and then there's two sort of parts. There's terms and conditions. So term would be something, for instance, that the seller will have the property professionally cleaned before completion.
Mm.
Or you have 2 visits. This caught a lot of people out, especially during COVID when they didn't have a term in there that there would be a visit for an appraisal.
Yeah, that's been happening for years. Yeah. I had one situation where a vacant property, this buyer's agent sent the appraiser in after brought the buyer along too for another look. They had no right to access, including the appraiser, and the seller was really upset.
Buyer.
No, the seller was upset.
Oh,
Because,
really?
yeah, because they didn't. It was being sold on behalf of the son was selling on behalf of the mother, and was very protective. And even though it was a vacant property, people coming by the property unannounced without permission was, of course, upsetting. And they just went. And that's the thing is, we need to have clarity in these things in communication. So these are all helpful. But yeah, a term is, I will do something, you will do something, something will exist at closing. A condition is more of a, if this happens, then that happens.
Or it would be typical conditions are financing, inspection, review of the property disclosure, review of the title. And so we have a template contract in Victoria, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's funny working with agents from another area, so whether it's Vancouver Island or especially Vancouver, I find the mainland agents don't have these same, so they build their own special terms and conditions. And so it's really important to go into those and read them carefully, because of course, when we're receiving the standard terms and conditions as we would on our contracts here in Victoria, we know what those contain.
Yeah.
But it's really important to check those other ones.
Yeah, and often you're like, what does this mean?
Yeah, well, there's nuances. It's sort of cultural. There's nuances. There's certain things like, and we've seen this before. Like, for example, we currently have our languages around a building inspection, and it's just, subject to obtaining a satisfactory building inspection, satisfactory to the buyer. Whereas in Vancouver, it might say subject to obtaining a building inspection, that the cumulative cost of repairs not to exceed, $500 or $5,000. And that's a little bit more specific. And so you can actually hold someone more accountable for that than, I'm just not satisfied with this.
Yeah. And again, you're talking about the will. So if the buyer wants to proceed, so this is what happened during COVID is even if even if the property had a major flaw, a buyer would often go through because there was a high will, because there was confidence in the market. And then when the market starts to falter, then like right now, I have many buyers who are buying rural properties and they have septic inspections, and we find issues during the inspection. So the question is, what do you do? So you have to be careful not to open up the contract again. And you, because the seller can walk away if the buyer says, if you, we want you to repair this or whatever. If
you start renegotiating, it can be deemed as, and again, get legal advice, but if you start renegotiating after you've formed a contract, it can be deemed as opening up the contract. So when you do find these things and you want to have those discussions, it's important to be done carefully.
Yeah. And often we're finding sellers are willing to do the repairs. So
yeah, well, you made a good point. Back, so to use COVID as the example, when the market was just screaming hot, in the market, and buyers were perceiving and we all were seeing the property values going up and up and up. So if you didn't buy today, you were going to be paying more tomorrow. If you didn't buy today and you were under contract, which was kind of like a golden ticket because you would have been competing against a number of people to purchase, then if you let that property go, are you going to find something better down the road, even if you may have more warts? And if you let it go, are you going to be competing and have to, it's the devil, So now,
yeah, and how long will it take to find a replacement property as well?
Right. So now we have a little more choice. We have more time to do due diligence, and if a problem is found, then there's a little more opportunity to have those discussions with sellers, real discussions with them to say, this was unexpected. This was not what we anticipated when we negotiated this contract. Why don't you take care of the costs of this, or would you share the costs of this, or so forth. And it's a conversation. Generally, we want to not open up the contract, as Jane referred to. And where it really is, there's language that we use to make sure we're not opening the contract, but where it really comes in is with where we say, you do this or I'm walking. That's pretty clearly saying I'm negotiating at this point.
Yeah. And so you can use terms so that you can negotiate without causing the seller to go away. And this is a without prejudice term.
Yeah. So this language in an email, and it's not right into the contract, but in an email saying I'm sending this without prejudice. And this is getting again into the weeds, but I just want to say, recently I've had some negotiations where I'm finding agents are a little bit less concerned about that. Like that's a language that you and I would use every time. But I've been involved in some negotiations recently where there's some discussion of a change, or they want a change done, and we get a change amendment for the seller to sign that hasn't really been fully discussed, and there's none of that preamble or language in it. And so it's interesting to me that it's either a realtor education item or an apathy item, or they truly don't. If they truly feel like, we're going to go forward or not based on the answer to this, then that's fine. It's really where you want to protect yourself. You protect your buyers with having the option to continue going forward. You want to put your hand up to let me know you want to speak. Yeah.
I do find it's an education item. The other thing is when you write a contract is you really want to be careful that you're writing good terms and conditions, because it's really like project management, and you want to put your client in a good position at the end. So for instance, if you are writing a contract on a condo and they have new flooring, you want to make sure that the strata is aware of that new flooring, because you don't want to have the buyer remove it once they move in because the strata isn't aware and there's a noise issue.
Right. So there's certain rules around flooring. You want to read that in the bylaws, and then you want to have a conversation with your clients around, it's always important to identify in condos what's been done that wasn't installed by the original developer, what's been done since.
And so I had a client buy a condo that they were the original developer recently, and they changed the flooring out, and there was no letter of indemnity. So then the buyer has to decide, do they want to accept that? And so that's another risk. So then you have to inform the buyer. This is what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then what you're doing when you're writing out the contract is that you provide your clients with resources. So these are people like home inspectors, lawyers, insurance agents, mortgage brokers. And then you do your inspections and your investigations. And then you may need to provide them with more resources, other people, to take them down a little path, like maybe the septic needs to be checked out and you need a contractor or something like that. And then you have to negotiate the resolution to the issue that you found. So the other day we found a filter in a septic system that was installed 25 years ago, has never been cleaned.
Mhm.
And so it backed up into the chambers of the septic tank, which we could clearly see. We saw the end result. The seller was there. They could clearly see what was happening. And so, they then have to resolve this issue either with us or with the next buyer. So why not just resolve it now?
Yeah, exactly. And those are the I mean, when you've got reasonable people and it's clear that the problem is not going to go away, and is going to be evident to the next buyer and the next buyer, those are generally resolvable. Um, where someone does a building inspection and they thought the roof was, had another, they assumed the roof maybe had another 15 years life on it, and they find out it's got 2 years life on it. Um, that's where they start to say, well, maybe there's some negotiation here. Um, these issues are always fun. They're always an interesting matter um, to go through. It's kind of like a negotiation after the main negotiation. They don't always come up. Oftentimes, things just run smoothly from accepted offer through the investigations to the subject removal. But when these do come up, it's really important to handle them in a, well, not to get too excited about it, just to handle it in a really calm and efficient manner.
Yeah.
And remember that everybody involved is hopefully this is news to everyone involved.
Well, and yeah, what he's saying is hopefully the seller didn't not disclose it, and that this is something that the listing agent is not previously aware of, which is usually the case. But you do want to resolve these in good faith. And when you're then negotiating the next part, you're going to have to write it out so that, remember, Mike Holmes talking about writing out a clause. This happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, so that it's very clear who's responsible for what, how it's going to be resolved, and when it's going to be resolved. And it's usually before completion, they have to provide some sort of receipt. So
Hmm.
it's also a question of remaining calm when this happens so you don't freak out.
Yep. Now, so I just want to go back to that. Hopefully the seller and the seller's agent weren't hiding something. At the same time, there's real estate law and general is that you only need to disclose what's called a material latent defect. So if it's something that's a defect to the property that could be discovered in a reasonable investigation, there's no requirement on a seller or their agent to make it explicit. So it is really important that you do your investigations. It's highly important that you do your own investigations.
But it's not what you find out, it's when you find it out. So we recently sold a property. The exterior was all covered. It looked like wood, but it turned out it was kind of the first
Asbestos.
generation. Yeah.
Yep.
Of it was asbestos, like a hardy plank type
Yep.
stuff.
Mhm.
So anyway, so we just disclosed it right off the top so that the buyer wouldn't be freaked out by it. And so it's not what you find out, it's when you find it out.
I think it's really important that you filter right from the very beginning people that are, it's clearly going to be discovered. And it's really important to filter that out and make it explicit right from the beginning so that anybody that would be concerned about that can either do their own investigations up front rather than find out after the fact. Um, and it means that you're more likely to get better negotiations and to a better end result. I, this is another reason for doing a pre-inspection too for a seller on a home that may be older and may have some hidden issues. It can be scary for a seller to do that because it might bring up items that they weren't aware of.
Yeah,
But
I
it
had
gives them the opportunity to get some quotes and put up your hand.
I
Go
had a
ahead.
seller who once he had renovated both sides of a property, and he had owned it a long time. And on the second property, he decided to open up the kitchen. I'm like, "Did you pull a permit for this?" "No, I didn't pull a permit." "Well, that's a latent defect. We have to disclose it." "I don't want to disclose it. They're going to get all freaked out." I'm like, "They're going to get all freaked out if you don't disclose this. But if you disclose it, then they go in with the offer knowing, so it's not an issue."
Mhm.
And, sometimes we are acting as the um, seller's advocate for them. Like we're advocating the best position for them.
We've seen, we can't know for a particular situation who the end buyer will be and what the end result will be. But we've seen so many transactions over the course of our career that we know in general how things are going to flow and what kind of reaction we're going to see from the marketplace. And we know overall that a surprise after the fact is grounds often for either, if it's truly something hidden, then there may be a legal action. If it's not, if it's found during the investigations period, it's going to be grounds for the buyer either to walk away or try to renegotiate, and they're going to renegotiate a lot more heavily
Yeah.
when it's a scary last minute thing they've got to try to figure out. Whereas if there's time up front and everybody's calm and everybody has full information, it often becomes a non-issue.
Yeah. And so issues that I found that it's pests, water, and old damage that hasn't been repaired.
Rot. Yeah. Pests, rot. Those are, any of those that causes long-term damage that is hard to get at. That's where it's really a problem for most people.
Okay, so then the deposit's due. So this money, our office requires a certified check. I don't know about yours.
Mhm. Or money transfer.
Yeah, and the reason, or direct deposit. We don't do money transfers, but
Direct deposit.
the reason for that is because you don't want the check to bounce, and so that money goes into trust. And then usually we're not supposed to, because it's a term and not a condition, we're not supposed to wait until the deposit is in, but we do because we just want to make sure it's going firm.
Oh, so this is a nuance that is really a realtor business practice and not anything that's a rule or related to contract law or anything like that. But we know that sometimes a deposit may not be provided, and if it's not provided, then the offer falls apart. And so if the seller, for example, has accepted $100,000 off the asking price, and then we post that sale and the deposit doesn't come out, we have to then start remarketing again. We've forecast what the seller will accept.
Yeah, and you're revealing the seller's motivation.
So we're protecting our sellers by not submitting a sale right away, and that's quite common.
Yeah, and just so you know, so the condition removal is due at midnight on the last day of the conditions, and so you can submit it up to 11:59 p.m. and there's no like 5 o'clock. I've seen that in
Some people write that in just because they want the clarity, and I agree with that. I mean, nobody wants to be up till 11:59 on a Friday night waiting to see if the conditions have been removed. I can imagine someone who's really feeling, who's not a very nice person may decide to wait till the last minute. I've never had that experience, but we have waited till the last minute just because there's some last minute negotiations or what have you.
And I just want to say this is where DocuSign has changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because previously, I remember my first offer, I had to drive. Well, I have a funny story.
Well, we were often doing contracts on the hood of our cars. We'd be outside of a property and writing up a contract. Well, there's 10 other people lined up to go in. We've just come out. Then we need to drive it over to the seller's place and present it in front of the seller's agent and hopefully get it accepted. And then, yes, if there's any other changes, there's a lot more driving involved. Today, it's the electronic car.
Yeah. So when faxes were in, I remember negotiating an offer.
Stylish.
What?
They were stylish. You said when faxes were in. I never heard that expression.
Well, when they were the thing to submit, I actually had my email. So people would fax me, it would go to my email. That was like really
considered. That's swish. That was good. Yeah.
And then anyway, so I submitted went to my office to submit an offer, and I lived at Pearson College, and I drove 10 kilometers to the office in Colwood. And I go to fax it, and I get a call from the agent. He goes, "We're going into multiple offers. You better come over." So I'm in my penguin pajamas. And this is a property.
Presentation then.
It was so funny. I'm like, well, anyway, we got the offer.
You got to add to that too that, it's really wise to have your clients sitting in the car as well whether it's their own car or yours, waiting while the sellers deliberate, or waiting in case any changes need to be made. And that really showed a lot more interest when you were bringing in that offer to say, my clients are in the car waiting for your answer. A lot more
Yeah.
powerful. We don't do that anymore. I feel like that still could be done, but most agents who are representing a seller won't advise their seller to work around that. They'll just say, I just want to be able to present all of these offers and not have any influence from outside forces, and we will just in our own time review these as they come in.
Yeah. Yeah. And so anyway, then the deposit is due, and generally I write 2 business days after the sign off. And the reason for that is because sometimes I forget, or the buyer forgets. And this just gives us, generally, we get it actually the day of condition removal. And so we're coaching them to do that. But just in case
Mhm.
something happens, it just gives us a little bit of a,
Well, and subject removal can be due on a weekend when the banks are closed, and they may not have gotten that deposit together, or they may need to move some money and funds around into the right bank accounts. So I do find sometimes that it doesn't happen at the same time, and it does add that extra step. It's best just to do it all at once, but nothing is perfect. So the 2 days is generally more than enough to make that happen, though.
yeah. Okay, and then you have your completion and possession date. So completion is the date that all the money goes through. Possession can be that same day. Generally, in places like Vancouver, it's actually 2 or 3 days later.
Hmm.
I often get this question, especially from elderly clients: Can I not move in on the completion day?
Right.
And I'm like, the possession follows the money. That's what I always say. Just possession
Yeah.
follows.
The keys are not going to be released until money is exchanged hands. And there's two sides to that. That completion is, the money changes hands, and then it actually gets legally registered with Land Title Office. And as long as the money has changed hands, most lawyers are going to be fine with releasing the keys, even if the actual true completion doesn't happen until the next day. It's probably it would have been dated for today, but would have been maybe it actually gets completed tomorrow. But as long as money is in hand, lawyers say, okay, go ahead. But I just had to deal with this. We had 2 closings that were connected. This is the proceeds from the sale of the property were going to flow into the purchase, and the second purchase, the first one closed right away. The second one, we were waiting on possession for 6 p.m. At 4 p.m. we still hadn't heard on completion. 4:30, 5 o'clock, still no completion. Calling lawyers hoping they would answer. I was told by the seller's agent I couldn't release the keys until we had actual confirmation. And luckily, before the 6 p.m., right around 5:40, we finally got word that it was all completed and I could go and release the keys. But the challenge is, and this is what I always, and hey folks, keep this in mind, probably wise to have your movers coming the next day, not right away. And further to that, we actually got the keys. We went in and found the place it wasn't a pigsty, but there was some stuff left in some drawers. It wasn't clean. It needed some cleaning. So you don't want to move into a dirty place. So then we had to arrange for cleaners too. So all of this
Yeah,
stuff. So the
yeah,
difference between completion and possession, two different things.
yeah. So we don't put completion in the contract in our calendar with our clients. We actually only calendar the possession date because we found that there's confusion between the two. So we just tell them that's when they need to be around. So
Oh, funny. Okay.
yeah. And why did that happen? Because we put both dates in, and one of my very first clients, who was a project manager, got the dates wrong. And I'm like, okay, well, if she, who is a project manager, gets the dates wrong, then it's not clear. I need to be more clear. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
all right. And then we're done. So, what are your needs and wants this week, buddy?
I really could I'd love to find a home in a gated community, preferably with some views, water views, but doesn't have to be rancher style with a basement with extra rooms. Small house or townhouse anywhere in town towards the West Shore.
What price range?
That one, there's two different versions of that. So one would be up to about 950 and one would be up to about 800. And for the one up to 950, it's got to be a rancher style as well. The 800 doesn't have to be.
There's one on Propeller.
Yes, I saw it. We went through it. They went to offers. They got some offers yesterday, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, nice, beautiful place. It's just a little far out for this client because if it was connected through Veterans Memorial, where you can get down to Latoria and over, there's two sides to Propeller Place. But this one, you have to go around up Machosen Road, and it was just a bridge too far for this client. Loved the unit, though. Beautiful unit.
Oh, what's interesting is they didn't have a lot of pictures of the interior, so my client was a little like, "What's going on?"
No, like really high ceilings and sort of set with some of Vancouver Island behind it, in the sense that it was just big rock wall behind, but it had a nice private feeling and a beautiful kind of gardeny space back there. Was probably a little dark, but had because the way the sun would have run, it looked like it would have been okay. So, but really nice finish and a really nice unit. So anyway, check status. I don't know. It's probably under contract now, though.
Okay. I am looking for a house in Colwood. There was one on Coleman with master or primary bedroom on the main with 2 bedrooms down up to 1.25. I have 2 gorgeous viewings right now. One is on Glendowick Way, 2520 Glendowick. That's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home, 2,400 square feet. It's on a large lot. It's 8,800 square foot lot, and it's very private backyard. And they've got this amazing outdoor space. So that's priced at 1.145. It's a screaming deal. And then I got one on Champions Way, which is very high end. It's immaculate. It is 5 bedrooms, 4 baths, and that's at 2,299,000. It's a 4,000 square foot house on an 8,800 square foot lot. It backs right onto one of the greens and the fairways in the back part of Champions. It was built by a realtor, and one of the occupants now is also a realtor. So you can tell this is a very nice property.
Is it going to sell to a realtor?
I don't know, but it is stunning. We've had really good open houses, and so I just want to see the buyer actually come to the table on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm just looking for my inactive listings. So I have somebody looking for a home in Machosen. They like kind of West Coast style, and that's up to 1.5 million. They want a private backyard. So we've seen some properties where they haven't really had a space for them to have their like fire pit and place for the dogs. We've seen places on rocks. So we want something where they can entertain with family, very family-oriented group.
Nice. Yeah, I spent a weekend last weekend on Salt Spring Island. We were visiting a property much like that. We spent all our time on the deck, just enjoying the space around us, and the dogs were running around in the yard, and yeah, it was just such a wonderful feeling. It was quiet. We were away from everything, and that's a wonderful feeling if you can get it. So good luck to finding those folks. That's great. I've got a listing coming up on Pandora, 1249 Pandora Avenue, Unit 2. It's about 1,500 square feet. We got floor plans and such happening this afternoon. We've got actually tomorrow afternoon. But anyway, if anyone is interested, the price is going to be $789. 2 beds, 2 baths, plus a rec room down, single car garage. Nice little unit.
Good. I've also got a listing coming up in Cobble Hill at Arbutus Ridge. It is a 2-bedroom, 3-bath home. It's 1,900 square feet, and it has gorgeous views. It's on Seaview Terrace, and that'll be over $1 million, probably 1.25 or something like that.
Yeah, can send me information on that, because the clients I have looking for a gated community, I'm going to talk to them about maybe whether or not they want to go that far.
So don't talk like that. It's not that far.
Well, they'd be far from family. And so it is far when you're elderly and you're not necessarily traveling so much.
Yeah. The great
So,
thing about that community is, and maybe we can do something about it one day, is it has a community. So there's lots if you to do if you want to move into a place where things are organized for
mhm,
you and you play bridge or tennis or swim or golf. It really is a lot of fun.
hmm, excellent.
Alrighty. So we're coming to the end here. You
Yeah, so
guys,
as always, if you like what you're seeing, then please like our show so you can get alerts for future. Subscribe as well, and comment, because we really, really want to hear your comments. We want to know what you're thinking and how you're doing. And suggestions for future shows are always wonderful. And so then share with your friends too if there's any particular comment or topic that you want to make sure that gets shared with folks that it might be useful for.
yeah. Yeah, because we find a lot of people come up and ask us for advice as well, and we like to turn those into topics. So
Mhm.
please ask for the advice. Okay, and don't forget we are on every Thursday morning at 9:30 here on the Victoria Real Estate Show. Andrew, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, reach out at 250-360-6106, email info@andrewplank.com, or check out the website with lots of resources and information, including these shows, at andrewplank.com. And then I'm on Instagram under Plank Andrew.
All right. And if you want to reach me, my name is Jane Johnston. I'm with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun. My number is 250-744-0775. You can reach me on briarhillgroup.com. And we're also this show and others about neighborhoods at victoriarealestateshow.com and on Instagram. Follow my life, my crazy life at realty teacher _Remax _Victoria. Take care, everybody. See you next Thursday at 9:30. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jane. See you later.
See ya.